This talk is going to be on how to secure podcast sponsors when your show isn't huge, and I'm kind of laughing now because we just finished a great session with Paula, who's got an incredibly successful show, and I would very much love to be in her position, but sometimes not all of us are there, right? Or we're just getting started, or we've been at it for a couple of years and we've got some good traction, but we want to figure out how we can earn some income with our podcast, with our passion project that we love, right? So my name is Andy Hill. I am the host of the Marriage, Kids, and Money podcast. It is a show focused on helping young families build wealth. So I've chosen a specific niche, a demographic of me, really. I wanted to talk to other young families, the other young parents, mothers out there that are trying to do right by their family and try to give them the best life possible. So that's what I do on my show. I interview parents. I interview financially independent families, debt-free parents. Young millionaires have done incredible things, and interview them and learn from them, and then also share some of the trials and tribulations of my marriage and my relationship as well, so people can learn from that too. So that's what I'm about, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, so how we can secure podcast sponsors. So let's jump right into it. So we're going to do three things today. It's going to be a three-thing talk. So the first one is going to be, we're going to talk about how we can connect with brands. And then number two, we're going to talk about how we can create that sponsorship offering. And then number three, we're going to talk about how we can develop a system that provides us income over and over and over again and makes you all smile. So before we start, though, I want to do something kind of fun. Knowing that this is a money conference, you guys all like money. I know that, right? So what I did is I put 300 grand in my bag for you guys today. So I'm going to give away 300 grand during this presentation. We have three sections, right? So 100 grand for each section, and I'm going to provide a question at the end of each section. So if you listen to me and then you had the answer, first hand up, I'm going to give 100 grand if you get the right answer. Sound like a good deal? You guys probably don't believe me that I have 300 grand in my bag, right? I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to show it just to prove it to you, just to make sure that you guys know that I am legit. 400 grand. This one's for me. 300 grand in my bag for participation today. So you guys know I'm legit. I'm putting them out here. All right, let's rock. Okay, so first thing we want to do, we're going to talk about connecting with brands. But before we get there, can we do a little show of hands, please? So who currently has a podcast in this room? Please raise your hands. Awesome. That's cool. Okay. Who currently is in this room that has aspirations of starting a podcast that doesn't have one right now? Awesome. Okay. And then lastly, who's a first-timer here at FinCon? Awesome. Oh, wow. That's a big part of the room. Very fun. Okay, cool. So one thing I want to talk to you about is my first time at FinCon, which was 2017 in Dallas, just 2 short years ago. And I want to talk about this being one of the best places to connect with brands. So I'm going to share with you 3 quick stories about how I've developed podcast sponsorship relationships based on this conference. So I came to Dallas in 2017 for my first FinCon. I had been developing podcast episodes for about 9 months up to that point, once a week for 9 months, so a good amount of episodes to at least put myself out there and say, hey, check me out, right? So I went to the show, and based on going to the show, putting myself out there, letting people know I was going to be there, I received an email prior from Student Loan Hero, and they said, hey, we're interested in what you're doing. Would you entertain podcast sponsorships? And I said, I didn't even know that I could be eligible for a podcast sponsorship. Sure, let's meet. And so we met up and had a quick breakfast there at FinCon, talked through the process. Knowing how many downloads I had at that point, it was a very inexpensive proposition for them and a pretty easy yes for them. But nevertheless, it was my first podcast sponsorship. So by simply coming to this conference, putting myself out there, putting out content I was proud of, receiving that opportunity, having lunch with them, talking to them about what the opportunity was, that was my first one. The next one, I came from the Dallas airport to the conference center, and I decided to ride the train. There's only one other person with me on the train at that time, and I struck up a conversation with him. I said, hey, I'm Andy Hill. I've got a podcast called Marriage, Kids, and Money. What do you do? Whoa, I'm Peter Polson. I'm the founder of Tiller. And we talked about his awesome company. And lo and behold, we developed a relationship. We talked about how I could start out as an affiliate with them, and they liked what I was doing, liked what I was promoting. That turned into a podcast sponsorship. And last but not least, I joined a really awesome dinner The first night I was there, a group of folks who are all passionate about family finance, and one of the attendees of that was the founder of Quotacy, which is a term life insurance company. I'm a big fan of term life insurance, taking care of your family, making sure they're protected. Again, developed a relationship with them, started with affiliate marketing, then turned into podcast sponsorship. My point here to share this is, come to these conferences, get engaged, have a lot of conversations, share what you're all about, share your passion around your topic, and things happen. It might not become a podcast sponsorship right away, but maybe you're starting as an affiliate, maybe you're learning them, and it can turn into a relationship down the road. And that goes for other conferences. I didn't put FinCon in here only. Conferences in general. Go to conferences that fit your niche and start conversations and create some business for yourself. Okay, outbound. So what do we do when we're not attending conferences for the other, 340 days of year, right? So we got to do some outbound. We got to reach out to brands that we know, like, trust, or hear about, that we have great reputation, that makes us proud. I was thinking about it earlier. It's something that you would want to recommend to your mom. You'd say, hey, Mom, I like this brand enough that I'm going to recommend them to you. So having that sort of vetting policy beforehand, saying, this is a brand that I either use or it really fits well for my audience, and you've researched that. So do that beforehand. Do a little bit of research to make sure they are brands that you know, like, use, or really appreciate. Reach out to them, share your genuine interest. So, hey, I'm Andy Hill for the Marriage, Kids, and Money podcast. I use your product for X years, and I like it a lot. It means a lot to me. Let's talk about how we can develop a partnership where I'm promoting your product, and you guys are reaching my audience. And what I found, email is okay, right? But everybody knows how clogged your email boxes get, right? So I found some success in reaching out through social media. Because if you use the Twitter message or IG message or Facebook message, sometimes there's a social media manager that manages that inbox, or it's the marketing manager in general, and sometimes they are quicker on the response. So taking advantage of things like that could be a good opportunity to connect. So I'll share another story just so you guys have relevant examples. I was a big fan of Bloom. It's a company that helps people with their 401k process, and it's very inexpensive. I think it's like $10 a month, but it helps them to lower the fees and look at different ways to reallocate. So I reached out to them on Twitter, and I just said, hey, I have this podcast. I'm very interested in your product. I think it's great. I love what you guys are doing, helping out the everyday person to invest for their future. And here's what I'm all about. Would you like to have a conversation? They reached back out. Hey, we've heard of your show. That sounds good. Let's talk. Send us over a media kit so we can learn a little bit more about your brand. From there, turned into a podcast sponsorship. So a little bit of outbound. I'm telling you these highlighted stories. For outbound, there's probably, I probably do 20 outbound for every one opportunity of a conversation I get. And that's the reality of it. Some people will just not respond to you. Some brands maybe just don't even do podcast sponsorships, and that's okay. So you got to do a little bit more homework on your side to do that outbound outreach. So if you don't necessarily want to start right away as a podcast sponsorship, or they don't, try to find ways to warm them up, right? Maybe work with them as an affiliate, or maybe invite them on their show and talk to them about a specific topic. You don't want to turn it into an infomercial, though, because that might turn off your audience right away. So what I like to do is I invite brands on, and some of the conversations are 75% informational, and then 25% a little bit about their company. So, for example, I interviewed Lively on my show. They're an HSA provider. I'm very interested, and my audience was interested in the triple tax advantages of the HSA, right? So we mostly talked about why HSAs are great and why you should consider them. And then at the end of the episode, we talked about how Lively could be a potential partner. So that turned into, yet again, a podcast sponsorship. So it was that warming up of that relationship. They said, hey, I kind of like that guy. Let's sponsor his show. So things like that, outbound, maybe having a little warm up in the beginning helps. All right, inbound. These are great, right? Where it just comes in and then you're like, hey, we want to sponsor your show. Yay! I didn't have to do much. That's my favorite, right? So how do we do this, right? How do we get more coming in? So a lot of what we hear is continually producing great content, doing it consistently. If you have a cadence of every Monday you're going to do a show, or every Wednesday you're going to do a show, be consistent with it so people know. The word gets out the more you produce. So getting on other people's shows is a great way to do this. So we're in this great podcast community. If there's other people that you feel that you could benefit on their show by telling a great story about yourself, hey, I paid off my mortgage in under 5 years. I know you have a show about the debt-free community. Do you think I'd be good for your show? I've listened to it. This is why I like it. Genuinely show your interest. Listen to their show beforehand. See how you can support them, and then be a guest on their show. So that helps getting yourself out there. One of my favorite things is as you continue in this FinCon world, you're going to start getting a lot of inbound opportunities. And I call them opportunities because some of them maybe seem like a little bit of junk, right? But if, for example, if somebody sends something into you and you say, hey, I'm interested in you doing a sponsored post. Would you be interested in that? I don't do a lot of sponsored posts. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just don't have that as part of my model. So sometimes I take that opportunity of somebody saying, hey, do you want to do a sponsored post? And I say, well, how about a podcast sponsorship? And I throw an offer back at them. Instead of deleting the email or saying, no thanks, I'm not interested, I try to spin it into something that I am interested in. And sometimes that works. So that's an opportunity to take advantage of what's coming in and turn it into income for you. All right. This is a really, really important point. So when you are going about this, considering sponsors, considering a partner to bring on to say, hey, this is a sponsor of the show, saying somebody's a sponsor of the show, you have to think about your audience first. Is this somebody that you're going to really be proud of sharing, right? So do your homework. Vet them, go online, look through third-party reviews, check in the FinCon community. We're all really tight here, so ask people, hey, have you worked with this brand before? You know, get out in the FinCon Facebook group, ask some other peers that are in the podcasting world, and see if they're a great partner for you. Whether sometimes they might be a great partner, but they might not pay. They might not pay on time. That's important knowledge you want to know too. So getting that information from our community, as well as just doing peer reviews online, is a great way to go. And also, what I like to do is when I'm considering them, not only am I vetting them, I'm also going through the user experience. So, okay, if I'm going to sign up for this product, what's it like to go through their website? And does this seem confusing? Are they using a lot of jargon that might confuse my audience and things like that? And if it feels kind of icky or not right, don't do it. Decline things that aren't a good fit for your audience. All right, so that's section one, and I'm going to give away $100,000. Okay. So, first question, first hand up. When you are reaching out to a potential sponsor, what is another way besides email that you can reach out to them? Right there.
Social media.
Yes, you get $100,000. Awesome. Sweet. All right, next section, creating the sponsorship proposal. So you got the sponsor, you're interested in them, you're trying to figure it out. You heard me say media kit a few times. What's a media kit? That sounds important. So, this beautiful media kit that I developed, it looks like, maybe I hired a designer or something like that. No, I went on Canva. It was free, and I just swapped in some pictures. So, take some time, go on Canva, go on something, there's a lot of these free design sites. Went on there, but the information you want to share overall, whether you do it on a Canva sheet like this where it's a 2-pager, I actually used a Google form, or Google Slides. They have these templates in Google Slides where you can just put the content in there, and that's what I used for the pro networking session that we did, and I got at least 3 verbal compliments from the people. Thank you for preparing this and having it and telling me about you, because this was very helpful. So the information that they want to know as a potential sponsor is, what's your show about? Your demographic. Who are you reaching? And you can get that information from Google Analytics or some of that information from Libsyn, or depending on what your podcast hosting service is. They want to know, is it a male show? Is it a female show? Is it a 50-50 split? What are the age demographics? Where in the country are people listening from? Are people listening in from other countries? That's all very important information that they want to know based on the product that they're selling. Does their demo match up with your demographic? Some of clients that you've worked with, they want to know your media reach. So how many site sessions do you have on your website? What's your Twitter following, your Facebook following, your IG following, things like that. But the main thing that they want to know is downloads per episode. Downloads per episode. So how many people show up each week to listen to your show? Right now, full transparency, I'm at 3,600 downloads per episode. So I've built that up from when I was talking with Student Loan Hero, I was probably maybe at 750, something like that. So that just gives you a general idea of where things are. So how do you develop your podcast per episode information, right? So go into your podcast hosting service. I use Libsyn again. Look at your last 8 to 10 episodes, total them up, and then divide it by 8, right? So then you get your average downloads per episode over the past 8 weeks. Now, one thing that I just learned about like a month ago, because this community is awesome, is that Spotify puts their stats separately. So make sure you include your Spotify as well in that area. I was actually selling myself short for quite a while, because Spotify's become a good platform for a lot of people listening as well. So that's a lot of the information that people want to know. And Media Kit, get a Media Kit. Pricing. So what do we charge, right? How do we charge? We want that, all that money there. We want that. That looks good. So how do we develop the package? So I'm going to talk about two different packages for podcasters who are starting out or maybe don't have a gigantic podcast, right? So one of them is the CPM model. So CPM stands for cost per thousand, or the M is really mille. It's like, I think another language, maybe Italian, something like, it means 1,000 essentially. So cost per thousand, right? So what I do is I develop a 12-episode package. 12 episodes because it's a lot of work to find podcast sponsors over and over again. So 3 months is pretty nice. And also, a repeated message over and over again can help people to remember to buy, right? Sometimes, I don't know what the statistic is, 10 to 12 times for somebody to hear a message for them to actually react, right? With that, I develop a 12-episode package, and I do it as a mid-roll spot, so I take 60-second spots in the center of my show. You can choose pre-roll, you can choose post-roll. I like mid-roll because I feel like if you get your show started off right away and you hook them with the theme and get them interested, they can take a little break in the middle and they're fine. Maybe that's just me. I've had them in there for 2 years. I've never had any complaints, and it works well for me. So right now I do 2 mid-rolls in the middle of my show. So I do a $25 to $35 CPM. So that's $25 to $35 cost per thousand. So for example, let's say you have a 2,000 downloads per episode show, right? That would be essentially a $25 CPM, that would be $50 per episode, or $600 for your total package of 12 episodes. So if you want to do like an 8-episode package or a 4-episode package, that's okay. It's a lot more work. And since it's a lot more work, I would raise the CPM, and that's what I do. So I make my CPM $30 to $40 CPM, and then for 4 episodes, I do $35 to $45 CPM, just because it's a lot more work for me. I don't sell as many of those because they seem like higher priced, but when I do, that's fine. I'm making a little bit more money. It's just going to be a little bit more time for me to get the next sponsor. Some things that you can do to sweeten the deal, right? So it's not just the mid-roll, the 60-second. You can say, every episode that I'm going to put out, I'm going to share on all of my social media channels, and I have this many followers, and you're going to get that much more exposure. Or I'm going to invite you on my show as the founder or the media rep because I want to learn more and expose you to our audience. That's a nice way to just sort of sweeten the deal so they feel like they're getting a lot more, and they are getting a lot more. And then another thing that I do is I do a 250 by 250 banner on my blog post on the side. You know, we all have that little side column, depending on how your site looks. I throw a little banner on there for the duration of the sponsorship, so they can get some more clicks, a little bit more exposure, and I'm proud to show them as a sponsor if I've chosen them as a sponsor of the show. That helps to get them more clicks and more opportunity for business. So that is pricing. Oh, sorry, we talked about CPM, and then there's a package price opportunity. So you can throw out the CPM model altogether and just say, hey, you know what? I serve a small niche, but they're very active and very engaged. I wouldn't do a 12-episode package for more than $1,000. And you just put it out there, and you might be surprised. You're probably going to get it. You might get it, because there's a lot of people hungry to sponsor on podcasts right now. So if you have a level where you say, I wouldn't do it for more than this, and you stick to your guns, don't be surprised if people start signing the dotted line and giving you money. So CPM and then package price. You could just say, yeah, that's what we're doing. All right, other options. So we talked about mid-roll, because that's what I like to do, but there's also a pre-roll opportunity. So that could be a 15-second spot, 30-second spot, 60-second spot in the beginning of your show. What I've read is that those go for a little less money than the mid-roll because sometimes people, if you're podcast listeners, might just skip over the first section because you want to get right into the meat of it, right? And then post-roll, from what I understand, is even less expensive because a lot of people who are listening to podcasts, sometimes they fade off at the end and they don't really listen to the end. So depending on that, that would just lower your CPM rate at that point. One other offering that you could do, I listened to this really fun show called the Frugal Friends podcast, and they have Hey, what's up? And they have a really neat segment that I like with really cool music called Bill of the Week, right? So you listen to it, and they talk about the Bill of the Week, and they say it could be your favorite Bill, like Bill Clinton, or your Bill like your Netflix or something like that. So people tell their favorite Bill of the Week. A short segment like that, 4 or 5 minutes, could have a sponsor. Bill of the Week sponsored by X, right? And you can develop a package that works well for that sponsor and works well for you. And it could be a short mention after that saying maybe 15 seconds or 30 seconds about what that sponsor actually does. For a couple of years, I had one called Money Master of the Week, which was a 4 to 5 minute segment where I'd share somebody from our community that's doing something really cool. You know, they paid off their debt or they, hit a net worth mark. And that could have been a sponsorship opportunity for me. I just didn't do it. So that's an opportunity. And then last thing, we talked about the interviews that you could do with founders or PR reps from the companies. That could be something you charge for. That's okay. We charge for sponsored posts, charge for sponsored interviews, and maybe turn it into a post. I go on Rev and I transcribe the entire interview, so it turns not only into an audio interview, but it also turns into a transcribed post, and I also create a YouTube out of it. So another opportunity for you to charge money for the hard work that you're doing and the exposure you'd be giving to a company. And the last most important thing is the contract. You want to get something signed, right? So what you put in the contract, the sponsorship details, what's in there, what are you offering them in bullet points, in format right at the top, what's included. From there, what are the dates of the sponsorship? What is the general cost? What are you saying? How do you want to be paid? I like to do 50% up front and then 50% afterward, just because I want to make sure that there's some guarantee that they're in, right? So we agree to that beforehand, the terms and everything like that, and then make sure you have a signature line so they can sign it, and you sign it as well. That way both of you have a document that says this is what we agreed to, just in case there's any questions about what you're providing. So make sure to get the contract. All right, end of section 2, giving away another $100,000. All right. First hand up. What does CPM stand for with regard to project? Oh, you got it. Yes, good. Cost per thousand, cost per mil. You did it literally, which you probably get $200,000 for that, but that's good. That's awesome. Okay, last section. Systematize, repeat, and grow, or just develop an awesome process that continues to make you money, which is fun. Okay, so first section here, let's talk about that monthly outreach. We talked about outbound quite a bit, right? So let's systematize this and make it a little easier for you. What I like to do is I put a calendar reminder. You either do it in Google Calendar or I have a reminders app in my phone that says reach out to 5 new potential sponsors this month. And by doing that, you're going to research 5 companies that you know, like, use, trust, everything like that, and then reach out to them. So we talked about doing it through email, talked about doing it through social media, but just throwing it out there, and you throw 5 out there, you might get 1 response. You just keep going, right? And you gotta have a little bit of thick skin too, because sometimes people aren't going to respond, or they're just going to say no, and that's okay. We're looking for clients, and we're looking for the right fit, right? But there are hundreds of companies out there that you could potentially work with, and if you stay persistent and it's one you really want to work with, over time, you'll wear them down, I think. You can develop some email templates that make this process a little easy, but you do want to customize it so it's not an email template, you're right? You want to say, here's what's about my show, here's why I appreciate your product, here's why I think we'd be a good fit. So it does require a bit of customization, but you can still templatize that a bit, maybe the portion about your show. Keep it short and sweet. Nobody likes these huge, long emails they got to read, and they're like, I delete it right away, right? So make sure it's short and sweet and punchy. Share some interesting information about your show. Hey, we were just featured in MarketWatch or CNBC, or I got nominated for a Plutus award, and the show's really taken off. I think you'd be a great fit. Things like that. Great news is always a good thing to entice people. So, continue to grow your show. That is probably the most important thing we know about all the time, right? The higher the downloads, the more money we'll get from the CPM model, right? So, again, we talked about doing this, getting on other people's shows, doing guest posts, getting interviewed from the media. So the FinCon Facebook community is just gold, by the way. There are so many people on there that are saying, hey, I'm looking for a source on X. I'm looking for a source on Y. Those opportunities get you exposure, they get you backlinks, and they get more people coming to your site. Be active on social media. This is really important. I've had more opportunities with brands, with media, just based on being active in social media. Twitter's a great place for that. A lot of people in media are hanging out on Twitter. Just being active, contributing, and supporting the community is always a great way to go. I've tried Facebook ads. I don't want to say that I've had massive success with that. What I've had more success with is just sending people to my website for consideration as opposed to sending them directly to the podcast. So you could try that. I wouldn't spend a ton of money on it, but it has helped me a little bit. And then the last thing is just, continue to produce great content, consistent, that everybody can rely on, and you become a great trusted source and potential partner. All right, and then diversify. So this is my favorite one. So let's say you get a relationship, right? And you've been working with them well, and then every month, let's send them some great news, right? Hey, it's great being a sponsor, a partner with you. Again, we were nominated. We received this awesome article that we were in on CNBC. Things are going really great. Happy to be your partner. By the way, I'm also a freelance writer. By the way, I also develop video content. By the way, I can do a Facebook Live for you. Find other ways to create revenue streams from your current clients, from your current sponsors, if that's something that you're interested in. Let me tell you a story. So Credit Sesame reached out to me based on some work that I'd been doing and some posts that I'd been doing on Twitter. They said, hey, we really like what you're doing. We'd love for you to do some Facebook Lives for us on our channel. They already have 500,000 Facebook followers and things like that. So I was doing Facebook Lives on their behalf. I'd been doing that for 6 to 9 months, and I wrote them and said, hey, this is great. Thank you so much. By the way, I have a podcast, and I'm looking for podcast sponsors. And they said, sure, let's give it a try. So the easiest place to get a sale, to do new sales, is with current clients or current sponsors. So take advantage of the relationships you already have and diversify your income. Okay, last 100 grand. First hand up. What is a great way to increase downloads for your show? Sure, there we go. I love it. Awesome. Okay, just gave away 300 grand. I'm broke. Awesome. Okay, so what we reviewed today. Number 1, how to connect with brands. Number 2, how to create the sponsorship proposal. And then number 3, how to systematize, repeat, and grow, or develop that great system to continue to provide you income. But the last and most important point is embrace this community. There is so much love and so much giving going on here. So the more that you connect, the more that you give, whether it's through commenting on somebody's blog post that's brand new, or leaving a podcast review for somebody who's just starting. Podcast reviews are gold, by the way. You ever leave a nice podcast review for a podcaster, you just melt their heart and they fall on the ground and they're just so happy. So do that. Give. Find out ways that you can say, hey, can you come on my show? And I'm interested in sharing information about you and your story, and maybe vice versa. And just support other people in the community, because honestly, that is the single best way that I've had any sort of mild success with my little show.